me. Details of these and other stories coming up at 6:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's take a moment to thank the Rise and Shine team. On production is Hlengiwe Mabaso, Pumuzo Ramakata, and Joey Likhodi. On technical production, Dando Lutuli. On news is sports news is Musibuti Makura. On news on Elenzinzi. Economics updates brought to you by Chandugo Lugege, and our social media queen is Nomalanga Butelezi. That's the team that brings everything together for the next 3 hours that we are together every morning, Monday to Friday, that is. So now, after the news every morning, we bring you a concise roundup of the stories from across the continent. This is over the past 24 hours. We have a team of reporters, analysts and experts that provide the context you need to stay informed. So we kick things off looking at the latest news from Togo, where 7 people were killed during anti-government protests last week. That's according to human rights activists who accuse security forces of using shocking violence against protesters.
The protest began last Thursday as people took to the streets to call for the resignation of longtime leader Forna Singbe amid what government critics called a cost of living crisis. A joint statement by 12 Togolese civil society and human rights groups accused security forces of carrying out arbitrary arrests, beating civilians with batons and ropes, and of stealing and destroying private property. The statement said 3 bodies, including 2 minors, were found in a lagoon east of Lomé, and 2 more in a lake in one of the capital's districts on Friday. Another 2 bodies were found in another Lomé district on Saturday. A government statement dated Sunday acknowledged the bodies were recovered from the lagoon and the lake, but said the deaths were due to drowning.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, 6 armed groups have signed a peace deal aimed at ending long-standing violence in the region. The UN-brokered agreement includes pledges to disarm and join the country's demobilization and reintegration efforts. Chris Ochamringa reports from Kinshasa.
According to a government official I spoke to, he says these 6 armed groups, the CODECO, the Cooperative for the Development of Congo, Zaire, the Patriotic Resistance Front for Ituri, and the 3 others are gathered in Aru town in Ituri province to end hostilities and try and build their region that has been devastated by war since way back in 2017. And what happened is that 4 of these groups signed the peace deal, and we're told CODECO, which is one of the most notorious of these groups, pulled out of the deal and they disagreed. I mean, people are saying that there might be a continuation of fighting because CODECO has been the one behind a lot of the attacks against civilians in that area.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development taking place in Seville, Spain. The gathering will allow delegates to drive reform of the international financial architecture and address financing challenges.
Excellencies, the Seville commitment is a global promise to fix how the world supports countries as they climb the development ladder. I see 3 areas of action. First, we must get resources flowing fast. Countries must lead by mobilizing domestic resources and investing in areas of greatest impact: schools, healthcare, social protection, decent work, and renewable energy. Unlocking these investments requires strengthening tax systems and tackling illicit financial flows and tax evasion, and helping developing countries dedicate a greater share of their tax revenue to the systems people need. The Seville commitment calls on developed countries to double their aid dedicated to domestic resources mobilizations to support this.
South Africa's International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola is leading South Africa's delegation to the 4th International Conference on the Financing for Development Summit. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
President Ramaphosa has delegated Lamola as the head of delegation following what he referred to as recent political developments that require close monitoring and management in the country, a reference to current tensions in the Government of National Unity. South Africa's participation at the summit aligns with its G20 presidency objectives of solidarity, equality and sustainability in complementing and supporting the summit's goals of reshaping the global financial system in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. On the margins of the 4th Finance for Development Summit, South Africa will convene a side event under the theme Forging a Common Agenda to Achieve Debt Sustainability in Developing Countries. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.
That's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. Coming up, we'll get more analysis and zoom into the East African region of our continent. We'll be speaking to journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, Dennis Peru, to highlight some stories from there.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
14 minutes past 6 Central African time. Let's zoom into East Africa now and see what stories are making headlines in this region of our continent. We speak to journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, Dennis Peru. Dennis, happy new month, a happy new morning to you. How are you this Tuesday?
Happy new month. I am doing well this morning. Hope you are well in South Africa.
We're well, thank you very much. And we start with where you're based in Kenya today. Gen Z demonstrations that have been happening there. It's now reported that at least over 500 protesters have been arrested. Give us an update on this story.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Of course, last week, the young people, the Gen Zs, went to the streets to demand the resignation of Deputy Inspector of the Police, Alid Lagat, over the death of a blogger and a teacher, Albert Omondi. And we've never seen what happened since the demonstration started in this country during the last year's the finance bill demos. As of yesterday, the police say that, they've arrested over 500 young people who are believed took the advantage of the demonstrations to vandalize and steal properties worth of millions. And one of the counties that has been hit by this arrest is Ndoro County, which was really affected with these demos, where we saw over 47 government vehicles banned. We even saw the government buildings from this county razed down by the demonstrators. And of yesterday, over 500 young people have been arrested, and some of them have been arraigned in court, and some will be arraigned in court today to answer to charges on allegation around property vandalization and stealing properties worth millions of shilling. And I remember the county, that is the county of Nairobi, which is now the capital of Nairobi was also hit by these demonstrations, and we've seen so many people, their businesses have been closed down because of the vandalism that we saw that was committed, and one of the largest supermarket chains in this country was looted, and some young people were also arrested inside the supermarket.
There's also allegations that the former deputy president of Kenya, Rigathi Gachagua, is connected to the latest protests in the country somehow. What is he being accused of exactly, and how does his name connect?
Asanda, this is not the first time the former or the embattled former deputy president is now being implicated in the chaos. I remember during the Gen Z's demos in 2024, when he was also in government, he was also implicated in financing the demonstrations. And speaking in an interview last week on Friday, Gachagua, who described the allegations as part of a political witch hunt, which is now aimed at tainting his name and diverting the attention of the government failures, and even went ahead and said that if indeed he was responsible for the chaos that we've seen, why have not they arrested him? He also said that, if really the intelligence had information that he had sponsored the goons to vandalize and steal properties worth millions of Kenyan shillings, why are the police still waiting? They have not yet arrested me. And remember, these remarks comes at a time when the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen characterized the Gen Z-led demos as attempted a coup, claiming that the demonstrators were well-funded, the politically motivated operation were also aimed at overthrowing a government. So in recent past, we've seen some of the members of government trying to throw jabs at former President Rigathi Gachagua, who is gaining a lot of influence among the young people.
Would you say he is correct when he's saying that these are politically motivated allegations, as far as also this being part of a planned coup, as now reports are alleging?
You see, Asanda, when you come out and say that a former deputy president sponsored the demos, that will be very unrealistic. Remember, we saw demos all over the country. Out of 47 counties, we had demonstrations in 27 counties. That is more than a half of the counties, and it's very realistic. And as I said, before, Rigathi Gachagua is really gaining the support of young people, because young people feel that they're tired with the government, and he has been at the forefront, telling government that at the end of the day, you have to listen to the grievances being raised by the young people.
Let's move to Uganda now, where President Yoweri Museveni is confirming that he does have a bid to run in the next elections. He's saying, the 80-year-old, that he wants to tackle economic growth. He wants to change things as they stand from GDP of $66 billion to $500 billion. How does he pledge to achieve this?
Asanda, thank you so much. Very interesting to see Yoweri Museveni, who is now 80-year-old, vying again. And remember, Museveni has been in power since the coup in 1986, where Tito Okello was overthrown in a 5-year civil war. And the experts, political experts, political commentators feel that, it is very unrealistic when Museveni says that, of course, I want to transform Uganda. I want to transform Uganda into a 500 billion US dollar economy. And remember, the Uganda's current domestic product stands at 66 billion US dollar. So it is very unrealistic to see whether that could be achieved. And I remember he has been in power now for almost 40 years. Where has he been, to transform this? And remember, the opposition leader was now turned out to be who turned out to be a pop star, who turned out to be a politician. Bobby Wine has also confirmed that he will be vying also against Museveni. And remember, in 2021, he rejected the widespread of he rejected the election results, alleging that there were a widespread of fraud, ballot tampering, and also intimidation by the security forces. And we've also seen, the rise in the arrest of people who are perceived to be the opponents of government. And also recently, where we saw that, Parliament passed a bill allowing the military courts to try civilian. An action that the Supreme Court ruled in early this year that was unconstitutional. So, Asanda, we will see how things will unfold in Uganda, because the election will be happening in January 2026, and we don't know whether it will be free and fair, because recently we have seen how election has been conducted in Uganda. Opposition leaders being arrested. One of them is Kizza Besigye, who is still under trial.
There's also the unconstitutional practice there of allowing military courts to try civilians that was passed recently. How likely are complaints by rights groups and opposition parties to be heeded as far as this is concerned?
Of course, Human Rights Watch has also criticized Uganda's military courts for failing to meet the international standard for judicial independence and fairness. Because when they're trying these opposition leaders and activists, of course, they will lean on the side of government. So this is where the issues to do with fairness and the independency comes. And a senior African researcher, that is Oyem Anyeko, who is a researcher at HRW, and I will quote, he said that, Ugandan authorities have for the years misused military courts to crack down on the opponents and the critics of government. So this will really play out during this year's election. And remember, we've not talked about the electoral reforms in Uganda, the things that Bobby Wine raised during the 2021 general elections. The reforms have not yet been, done. So experts or political science activists, experts feel that, this will not be free and fair election in Uganda.
Off to Tanzania now. The International Monetary Fund has granted the country $448 million US. What is the financing for?
Yeah, thank you so much, Asanda. Of course, this comes after a team of a credit facility, and that is now Resilience and Sustainability, RSF, met with the government officials in Tanzania. And I remember this is just trying to unlock and bridge or bring into IMF support that is about 907 billion million US dollars, and this is just to finance some of the trying to revamp the economic status of Tanzania. And remember, these could also we've seen inflation in Tanzania. So and IMF coming on board to credit Tanzania these billions of money. It is just a way just to bring.
Hello, Dennis. Have we lost you? Are you still there? I think we've got a network issue on his telephonic line. We're going to be heading to news headlines in just a bit, though. I wonder if it's going to be possible to try and get a hold of Dennis just to finalize on that point, and also discuss what's happening in Ethiopia, where they've opened a landmark science museum in Addis Ababa, how that will contribute towards the science and technology goals for Tanzania, and what this will mean also even for the education sector. That science museum being launched or inaugurated in Addis Ababa. But I think we'll let Dennis go as we make our way to the news headlines.
Zochitika ndimodapiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna wazamalonda kumalawi aletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Irovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Irovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza shuga kumaiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pamsika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Irovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula shuga kaya ndi ku Irovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa kumaiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
Zochitika ndimodapiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, we had to cut that conversation on our East Africa wrap short of 2 minutes. But these analyses come to you on Rise and Shine every morning, where we zoom into a region of the African continent. Dennis Beru there, grassroots journalism Kenya leader and journalist. Let's get our news headlines now. It's 6:30 Central African Time. Here's Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. 2 of Cameroon's government ministers appointed by President Paul Biya have already declared to run for presidency. The 92-year-old is sick and cannot rule. Dissenting voices of close collaborators of Biya continue to echo, asking him not to run in Cameroon's October presidential polls. Government officials, academics and civil society organizations from several countries will today attend a symposium in the KwaZulu-Natal province in South Africa on seeking ways of furthering gender transformation in education. And a new study predicts that more than 40 million of the world's most vulnerable people could die in the next 5 years because of the dismantling of the main U.S. aid agency. Channel Africa News, I'm Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with the world of sports for our first full bulletin with Musibudi Makura for the day.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Very good morning from the Sports Desk. So the Brazilian side, that's Fluminense, shocked Inter Milan with a 2-0 win to reach the quarterfinals of the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup last night. Now, the match was played in front of a crowd of just 20,000, and the final match at the 74,677 capacity Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. Striker German Cano stooping header in the third minute put the Brazilian Giants ahead very early, and then substitute Hercules scored a curling edge off the box shot against the run of play in the last 25 minutes of that game. Fluminense now joining Brazilian club Palmeiras in the quarterfinals and will play Al Hilal in the Camping World Stadium in Orlando on Friday. Al Hilal just an hour ago shocking Manchester City in their last round of 16, winning 4-3 in extra time in that encounter. On to some tennis news now. Two-time defending champion Carlos Alcaraz avoided a shock against Italian veteran Fabio Fognini in the Wimbledon first round to set up a meeting with British qualifier Oliver Tevitt. Now, Alcaraz had to dig deep to win 7-5, 6-7, 7-5, 2-6 and 6-1 as he opened the centre court play on a sweltering first day of court Grand Slam tournament. Now, the 22-year-old Spaniard quickly secured victory when an entertaining contest resumed after a 15-minute pause in the deciding set. Alcaraz, who is the second seed behind Italian Yannick Sinner, also his rival, struggled on serve and also made uncharacteristic errors off the ground throughout a 4.5-hour contest in temperatures topping 32 degrees Celsius. Now, in his final Wimbledon appearance before his planned retirement, the 38-year-old Fognini twice fought back to force a decider, but Alcaraz regained control to extend his winning streak to 19 matches. On to some rugby news now. Springbok forwards coach Dan Human says the South Africans were given a thorough test against two of the best tight head props in the French league when they scrummed down against the Barbarians. Human is expecting more of the same against Italy when the incoming tour series begins in Pretoria, in the capital city, this weekend. Now, the Springboks will play Italy twice, followed by Georgia, and the forward pack coach is particular in relishing the challenge. Human explains.
The Barbarians is not playing week in, week out, so I don't think we tried to do a lot of analysis on them, especially individually, but unfortunately they haven't played the week before. So obviously you must go and have a look at all the different teams where they were playing, and we tried to have a look at them there. Obviously this week it's a proper test match team that plays regularly, so I think we can do even more homework on them. That's a big difference for me between the two.
On to the story now. The president of the Athletics Federation of Nigeria, Tornobok Okowa, has waved favour Ofili's goodbye to her new country, Turkey, noting that she is old enough to decide about where she wants to go. The 22-year-old sprinter wrote to the Athletics Integrity Unit for the change of nationality. According to reports, the 150-metre world record holder cited the frustration she suffered at the hands of the Athletics Federation of Nigeria in recent international competitions as reasons for the switch. Okowa stated that he was unaware of Ofili's switch and only learned of the development through the media. Now, ex-athlete Deju Alu did not take kindly to the news of Ofili's switching to Turkey, as he heaped the blame on the doors of the Athletics Federation.
Apnea is enough to frustrate any serious athletes. For example, you prepare so much, you want to go to the Olympics, at the end of the day you find out you're not going for a reason not yours. On two occasions we're missing out. At those bigger stage, it's that time Nigeria, we need to sit up and start doing things properly. We need to do things right. Look at South Africa, for example. You can imagine the way they are performing so wonderfully well across the globe this year in particular. And it's not like we don't have the talent, but the management has always been our problem. We need to really step up. We need to really turn around things. It's frustrating.
Meanwhile, 2013 AFCON winner, as well as the former Super Eagles captain Ahmed Musa, has also described the news as disappointing. Musa says the decision is understandable, but also urged the sports authorities to wake up to their responsibilities.
No one in Nigeria is going to see that and say you feel happy. Yeah, we know that for her, maybe it's a very good decision for her. But for we, I think we lost a very good athlete. So there is nothing we can do. Let's just say to the federation, they just need to do more, because we can't keep on losing more. Even though footballers and some of our athletes is not good.
And that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makure.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get our first economics news update for this Tuesday, the 1st of July. Here's Chanduko Lugege with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. South Africa's Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Hossein Tsoramokgopa, says between January and March this year, municipalities were owing Eskom about $5.2 billion. The minister revealed this in a written reply to a parliamentary question from DAMP Kevin Mileham. Mileham wanted to know which municipalities are defaulting on their Eskom payments and what's the total debt owed by each municipality. The minister says from this period, about 75 municipalities were owing over due debt, which is more than $5.6 million. Congolese gold miner Twangiza Mining SA has accused Rwanda-backed M23 rebels of forcing its employees to work against their will and without pay after seizing its mine in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. M23 staged a lightning advance earlier this year in Eastern Congo, taking control of more land than ever before in North and South Kivu provinces. The Twangiza mining site is located in South Kivu province. Tutongobeni has more.
Twangiza Mining says it was ordered to suspend operations at the mine in May after M23 accused it of not paying taxes. The company, which is headquartered in Congo, describes itself as a Chinese firm. It says its workers were being held in captivity and forced to work in inhumane conditions without any security measure, remuneration or medical coverage. Reuters could not independently verify the company's claims. Twangiza Mining says production at the mine has been paralyzed and that the site was entirely controlled by a group of Rwandan nationals who work with M23 and claim to be new investors.
In North Africa, Morocco's economy has grown 4.8% in the first quarter of this year, compared with 3% the same period last year. Morocco's National Statistics Agency, HCP, says the growth was driven by an improvement in farming and industrial activities. These grew 4.6% and 4.5% respectively. HCP says higher domestic demand and lower inflation also supported the growth. Legal analyst Elton Hart says there is apparent flouting of processes in the packaging of charges and on the matter involving 4 former South African transport company Transnet executives. They are out on bail of over $2,800 each. The executives, including former CEO Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama, appeared in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Johannesburg. They are linked to alleged multi-million-dollar fraud and corruption cases involving tenders to acquire new locomotives. Hart believes the current charges should be added to the 2022 charges, wherein the group was similarly charged in the corruption case involving the procurement of 1,062 locomotives.
I think them now going in small chunks after these guys might just distort the state's case instead of helping the state's case to actually prove that there was a flouting of processes. I would think that you should be actually compacting these things and actually combining them to actually prove that on a number of occasions, this was the modus operandi of the group and this is how they flouted the processes instead of trying this piece here and trying that piece there, trying to create a bigger picture. I think it will complicate the case more than helping the case.
Swiss federal authorities say a cyber attack on the Swiss Health Foundation Radix that involved data being stolen and encrypted has also affected the federal administration. The Radix Foundation is a non-profit organization operating in the field of health promotion. Swiss authorities said in a statement that Radix's customers include various federal officers and that the stolen data has been published on the dark web in the wake of the attack. They did not provide specifics on the data that has been published. Authorities say they are trying to determine the specific units and data affected by the attack and that the attackers did not break directly into state-run data systems. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 537. In Botswana is 13 pula 21. In Kenya 128 shilling 495. Zambia 23 kwacha 79. BRICS countries $1 in Brazil is at 5 riel 46. Russia 78 rubles 16. India 85 rupee 62. China 7 yuan 16. South Africa 17 rand 74 cents. $1 is 72 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $3,319, platinum at $1,338 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $66.43 a barrel. That's all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact for this 1st of July. Did you know South Africa will hold the G20 presidency from 1st December 2024 to 30 November 2025, only 5 years before the deadline of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG 2030 agenda. Only 12% of the SDG targets are currently on track, with approximately 50% needing more substantial progress and more than 30% of the SDGs having either stalled or reversed. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
6:45 Central African Time. It is good morning if you've just joined us. Let's take a look at this story now. Burundi marking its 63rd Independence Day today. This is the 1st of July. The nation is reflecting on its journey since gaining freedom from Belgian colonial rule in 1962. While independence brought hope and national pride, Burundi has faced a long and complex path marked by political instability, civil conflict, and recent concerns about democratic backsliding. This year, the CNDD-FDD ruling party claimed a near-total victory in the June legislative elections, raising new questions about political plurality. At the same time, the country continues to deal with the lasting effects of displacement, as thousands of Burundians remain in exile across Africa, North America, and Europe. To better understand what this Independence Day means for Burundians at home and abroad, and to reflect on where the country is headed, colleague Peter Ndoro spoke to Dr. Zenon Ndayisenga, an academic and analyst on East African politics and governance. He began by asking what Independence Day means for ordinary Burundians.
For the country, it means a lot, and also for Burundians, it means a lot. But there are still many things that have to be done for Burundi to be called an independent country.
You've raised a critical question about political representation in Burundi. The CNDD-FDD won 96% of the vote in the recent 5 June elections, taking all parliamentary seats. Do you think that Burundi is moving back to a one-party system, which was reminiscent of the 1980s under Jean-Baptiste Bagaza?
As I explained in September 2024, when I managed to meet with former South African President Dr. Thabo Mbeki, I clearly demonstrate that Burundi is returning to one political party rule. I even scientifically predicted this before, that the ruling party is willing to take all parliament seats, and that is what happened in the previous elections. In 1982, under President Colonel Jean-Baptiste Bagaza, Burundi had a parliament composed of members from one single political party, which was UPRONA. From that time, Burundians have to fight in order to establish multiple party rule. The ruling party itself, since the DFDD, was born from a struggle that opposed army under Buyoya rule and the oppressed majority Hutu, who were denied in political space, army, police, and education. So I therefore think that the 100% victory of CNDD-FDD is also an end, as all existing political opposing party will, from now, I think, form existing movements, which will cost a lot of the ruling party, because such a resistant movement will be composed of both Hutus and Tutsis, mostly from Senel and UPRONA.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Some observers argue that this dominant party scenario undermines political diversity. What are the implications for democratic governance, civil liberties, and future elections, in your view?
I think the diversity or multi-party rule in Burundi, it's something that's going to be forgotten, especially in these coming 5 years. But I think we're still going to wait for also the 2027 elections. We will have to, Burundians, they will elect the president, but that will be only for president, because the diversity is mostly seen in parliament. But in parliament, as I was saying, it looks like now it's closed. So there will be only one voice from the ruling political party, the CNDD-FDD, and the other political party will not be heard in the parliament.
What is everyday life like for Burundians? What's it like to live every day in Burundi?
So, let me say, the everyday life in Burundi, so it's something which is critical. So there is more than 4 years, I think, now Burundians, they suffer in terms of transport, because the country doesn't have petrol. Even the capital city itself, they struggle to have petrol. And another thing is that also when it comes to water and electricity, that's another challenge, especially in the cities and in Bujumbura and the other major cities. So, and all those things, they add to the poverty that is seen. Yeah, but I think if they could maybe apply what the president say every day, Burundi could be changed in another country. But the issue is that the president says something, a good political speech, but when it comes to application, so we found that there is nothing. Everything remained in theory without practices.
So how will people be celebrating today? Will there be a lot of fanfare?
So I think independence is for everyone. So obviously they will invite all political parties, and they will invite all organizations, churches as well. But if you summarize whatever I have been saying, you will see that there will be some who will be celebrating, physically maybe attending, but morally not there.
Let's talk about displacement. After the 2015 and 2020 elections, there was a sharp increase in Burundians fleeing the country. Many sought refuge in Tanzania, Rwanda, Kenya, Zambia, Canada, and even South Africa. Do you believe there's a genuine hope for their return, especially considering Burundi's vision of becoming a developing country by 2040 and a developed nation by 2060?
Thank you. That's a great question. There is no hope that the Burundians will go back to Burundi unless the president President Evariste Ndayishimiye push for the return of the multiple party rule. For instance, the outgoing parliament was composed of more than 3 political parties. That was the CNDD-FDD and the CNL and the UPRONA. This was much better than the current results of the previous elections. And as I said above, if the situation remains as it is, the 2024 and the 2060 Burundi vision will be impossible. And I think in terms of Burundians who are becoming refugees, especially when I estimate most of them, they are in Tanzania, Rwanda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and South Africa. Even though, as you said, there are still other increasing number of refugees that are seen in Canada, in Zambia, and South Korea as well.
All right, I'm going to take you back a little bit to your first answer. And in the heart of today's celebrations, after 63 years, would you say that Burundi is truly independent, politically, economically, and in terms of its global partnerships?
I think Burundi is not independent like most other African countries. I think Burundi also achieved pseudo-independence. According to Professor Mabogomore, he explained further the concept of pseudo-independence as a false independence, where people are acted upon than them to decide on what they have to do. Then I think that if we assess Burundi's relation with other East African countries and also with the entire world, yeah, there are still a lot to be done for Burundi to be called a country that can reach its vision 2040 and 2060.
And let's touch on international relations. What's the situation with Rwanda? I know that in recent times it's been very difficult.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the situation in Rwanda, I will explain this, trying also to relate it to the M23 rebels that are fighting in Congo. Burundi had or have a good relationship with Congo government. And the country doesn't have a good relationship with Rwanda. Hence, Rwanda was accused of supporting M23, and Burundi was against the M23. So, saying that if the M23 will carry on fighting in Congo, they will end up also to come to Burundi, come in another form supporting another rebel group that is called Red Tabara, which is most of the time also said that is supported by the Rwanda government. So the relationship between Rwanda is not good. Bishops from Catholic Church, they tried to make the two countries to negotiate, but it couldn't work. So this is a sign that the relationship between Rwanda and Burundi is not good.
So 63 years on, I know that the people of Burundi are hoping for something different. Is there hope in your view that things might change?
No, I think things are not going to change because instead of changing, I think it's deteriorating. So because if I can try to summarize, from 1962 when Burundi got independence, the country was led by Rui Rwagasore. So, and Rui Rwagasore was killed after just only a few days. And then the country was led, after his death, the country was led by the prime minister. And the prime minister also was impeached in 1965 by a coup d'etat that was led by Michombero. And Michombero led Burundi for 10 years, from 65 to almost 76. And it was during that time that Burundians, especially the Hutus, they were massacred, especially in 1972. There was a genocide that could not be accepted by the UN, but the country still recognized it. So there was a crisis. And then Chombero also was replaced by another soldier, who is Jean-Baptiste Bagaza. So Jean-Baptiste Bagaza led the country for 10 years, so under the military rule as well. So Bagaza was also replaced by Pierre Buyoya, so another military as well, Major Pierre Buyoya, so who led the country during that time, I think, from 87 to 93. And then after 93, there was a vote of, they did the vote for democracy, a democratic vote that happened, and where Ndadaye Melchior won. And then Ndadaye Melchior also was killed after 3 months. So there was a tension. In 1966, Buyoya had to come back until 2003. So, and then from 2003 to 2005, there was a transition government. And from 2005 to today, 20 years, the country is led by Senator FDD, and most of Senator FDD members, as I said, all the leaders came from military. So the summary, you can see that from 1963 to today, Burundi has been led by soldiers. Well, so which it becomes difficult for them to maintain the democratic rule, and because some of them, they don't even understand what development means. So they rule just like without taking seriously the concept of Ubuntu, concept of democracy, concept of human rights, concept of power sharing. So you can see that Burundi has been suffering from 1962 to today. So there is no hope then, unless there is a great change that everyone can appreciate.
That was Dr. Zanon Ndayisenga, an academic and analyst on East African politics and governance, in conversation with our colleague Peter Ndoro.
More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage.
As we enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine, it's a good morning to you. My name is Asanda, Beda, coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. This is, of course, Channel Africa. You tuned into DSTV 802. On OpenView, we are on 6 to 8. We are on www.channelafrica.co.za. We're also on SABC Plus, that app. You can also access us via our live streaming throughout our social media platforms. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle throughout all those. Well, let's get into this next hour of Africa Rise and Shine. Thanking you, of course, if you've just joined us. Would also love to hear your views through our channels on social media at Channel Africa 1. We look in this hour into the energy and water experts from the SADC region having gathered in Harare, Zimbabwe, to address challenges in electricity production and improve water management across the region. Also, more locally in South Africa, many municipalities are in a deep state of financial and operational distress, crippled by a few things. And what exactly is going wrong with the South African municipalities? We'll be unpacking that question and attempting to answer it with Kevin Tutani, who is an independent policy researcher and author of a new paper tackling this particular issue. So those and more coming up on Africa Rise and Shine in this hour. Let's get our news update first with Onetzinzi. Here is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Two of Cameroon's government ministers appointed by President Paul Biya have already declared to run for presidency, saying that the 92-year-old is sick, hardly seen in public, and cannot rule. Dissenting voices of close collaborators of Biya continue to echo, asking him not to run in Cameroon's October presidential polls and accusing him of making Cameroon poor during his 42 years of leadership. Moki Kinzega reports that pressure on Biya not to run for president again is increasing in Cameroon.
The opposition and civil society also say Biya is very old, sick, and is hardly seen in public, an indication that he no longer leads Cameroon. Biya has ruled Cameroon for more than 4 decades. Opposition parties say he rules with an iron fist and wants to keep power until he dies.
Malawi Human Rights Commission Chief Executive Officer Habiba Husman says the lack of action by the police following an attack on demonstrators remains concerning. The comments come as claims emerged that the Malawi Police Service and the country's defense force have failed to protect fellow citizens. This was expressed by the United States Embassy in Malawi following attacks by a group of armed assailants on demonstrators on Thursday last week. Usman says despite engagements with the police, there is lack of accountability.
This latest incident is more concerning because the attacks were happening while the police were there and the soldiers were there, and the attackers were not apprehended at all while this guy was being hacked. So the only response that we've now received is from the head of state, Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, who has given out a strong statement condemning the acts, but also asking the Malawi Police Service through the Minister of Homeland Security and others to submit reports to him because, as you know, our president has been out, he's in Nigeria. So that statement was released in Nigeria where he's demanded reports, investigation reports on the same.
Another body in the Umtata floods has been recovered by search and rescue teams in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. The death toll now stands at 102. This comes after some parts of the province were hit hard by floods, leaving most families displaced. Provincial government spokesperson Kuselwa Hankis says 56 flood victims have been buried as the search for more bodies continues.
As of today, a total of 102 bodies have been recovered across various districts of the Eastern Cape following the devastating floods that occurred about 2 weeks ago. The War Tambo District Municipality remains the hardest hit with 78 fatalities. From the 102 bodies recovered, 96 bodies have been identified and handed over to families, while 6 remain unidentified. Due to the passage of time, DNA tests may be required to positively identify bodies found decomposed, thus implying that it may take longer to identify the deceased.
Government officials, academics and civil society organizations from several countries will today attend a symposium in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province on seeking ways of furthering gender transformation in education. Breaking down gender stereotypes and tackling gender-based violence at schools are seen as ways of promoting the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals for a more peaceful and equal world. This symposium comes on the eve of the third G20 Working Group meeting on education in Zimbabwe in the northern Durban. And lastly, a new study predicts that more than 14 million of the world's most vulnerable people could die in the next 5 years because of the dismantling of the main U.S. aid agency. President Donald Trump's administration has made funding cuts to USAID and its aid programs worldwide. The U.S. government says this is part of its broader plan to remove wasteful spending. The study has been published as USAID is formally closed as an independent agency 6 decades after it was set up. The BBC's Grant Ferret reports.
The figures contained in the research published by the Lancet Medical Journal are staggering. Their scale reflects just how central USAID has become to the global humanitarian effort. According to the study, the agency averted more than 90 million deaths worldwide in the 2 decades up to 2021. Many were related to HIV prevention. About 80% of USAID's funding is being cut, and from Tuesday it will be officially absorbed into the US State Department. Critics say the sudden, largely unplanned nature of the change is especially damaging.
Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Fluminense as well as Al Hilal win their respective matches and qualify for the quarterfinals of the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup, while South Africa sets Zimbabwe a huge target of 537 to win the first test in Bulawayo. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Energy and water experts from the SADC region have gathered in Harare, Zimbabwe, to address challenges in the electricity production and improve water management across the region. Electricity shortages plague the entire region, largely due to climate change-induced droughts severely impacting power generation. Over the next 5 days, senior government officials and ministers responsible for energy and water will discuss strategies to unlock access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy, which is crucial for powering economies. John Kassem filed this report.
The Southern African Development Community, SADC, is convening the joint meeting of the committees of ministers responsible for energy and responsible for water in Harare this week. This ministerial meeting, which aims to strengthen regional collaboration and assess progress on key initiatives in the energy and water sectors, started Monday with senior officials meeting for the next 4 days. The joint ministerial session will coincide with the 30th anniversary of the Southern African Power Tool, established by a council decision in August 1995. Meanwhile, these meetings are taking place at a time when energy production is seriously being affected by climate change and a number of other factors leading to load shedding in most cases. Zambia and Zimbabwe are some of the worst affected members owing to reduced water levels in Lake Kariba, leading to a 25% production surge. The high-level delegates are also expected to review implementation progress of the Mission 300 funded by the World Bank and the African Development Bank. The project is aimed at providing energy to 600 million people, starting with 300 million by 2030. Discussions of the development and regulations of the petroleum and gas subsectors will also be key this week. Meanwhile, the committee is expected to adopt emerging technologies such as green hydrogen and smart grids, as well as recommendations from the regional stakeholders dialogue on a just energy transition framework for the SADC region. In water, progress on regional and transboundary water projects led and implemented by the river basin organizations and shared water institutions will be assessed together with the groundwater and livelihood grant projects. One of the co-chairpersons of the senior officials meetings on water, Professor Obejiri, who is the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture and Water, had this to say.
Most of our energy is derived from hydropower, so the link between energy and water is inevitable. For water, it goes beyond just the energy resource that we must have. It also is a direct response to climate change and variability. Obviously, the issue of climate change is with us for the longest time. Southern Africa being a direct, a directly impacted region, we know that we will have 10% less water. We will have 10%, a 2% increase in temperature, meaning more droughts. So looking at the water issues as affected by climate change is critical.
Professor Jiri added.
We do have, specifically for this meeting, we look at how we can harness water resources to to drive our agriculture, how we can harness water to drive our energy sector. So looking at the Great Inga project, looking at the Zambezi and Limpopo Basin and other basins that we have in the region, in the SADC region, is critical to see how much water we can harvest for both agriculture and also for energy. So this meeting is very, very critical for us in the region as we look at how we can harness water for agriculture and also for energy generation.
Your morning
in Harare, Zimbabwe, for Channel Africa News.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Across South Africa, many municipalities are in a state of deep financial and operational distress, crippled by debt, poor service delivery, mismanagement, and political interference. But what exactly is going wrong, and how can it be fixed? This morning, we're joined by Kevin Tutani, an independent policy researcher and the author of a new paper titled Decisively Resolving Municipal Distress. His research offers sharp analysis of the crisis and bold proposals for turning things around. We welcome him now. Kevin, good morning to you. Thank you for making time.
Good morning. You're welcome.
You describe many municipalities as commercially bankrupt. What does this mean?
Well, look, their assets, their liabilities exceed their assets, and it doesn't look like they'll be able to pay their debts. Looking at their cash flow, in the immediate term, and in the immediate term and in the medium term, but in the near future as well. So they're not doing good financially.
Your research highlights a deep skills deficit in local government. How serious is this, and how did we get here?
Well, look, around 25% of critical roles they are vacant. Around 25% of them. So 1 in 4 critical roles. You're talking of municipal managers. You're talking of technical directors. You're talking of chartered financial officers. You're talking of those senior people. Around 25% on average of the roles, they are vacant. They're not filled. Right. That's number one. Okay. In Tshwane, that is in Pretoria, the situation is worse. Around 40% of the roles, in critical roles, they aren't filled. How did we get here? Well, there is obviously the rates that the government is paying, local government is paying, they're not in line with market rates. They're under market rates, they're less than market rates. If they were at market rates, private sector salary payments, that's market rates, they would attract more skills, number one. And then number two, there's also skills erosion. I mean, there's what you call labor turnover. In these critical roles, there's serious labor turnover. And a paper by the Bureau of Economic Research in 2021, right, of the University of Stellenbosch, found out that in terms of municipal managers and chartered financial officers, on average, most of them aren't spending more than 2 years in their roles. The 2 years, under 2 years, they leave their roles, they go in the private sector. So this is what's going on. There's high turnover of these roles, critical roles, and there's high vacancy rates. So it's a serious, lack, deficiency in that area.
You've argued that many municipalities are not underfunded, but they are mismanaged. Can you explain that, especially given the growing budgets?
Well, look, municipal revenue overall, 154 billion in around the year 2010, all right. And then coming through to 2024, municipal revenue went all the way up to 520 billion rand. That's their revenue. So their revenue, their income has actually been growing by 9% each year without a break from 2010 to 2024. Their income, their revenue has been growing by 9% each year. Okay, it has been growing at a faster rate than inflation. Inflation has averaged 5.2% in that same period. Okay, the revenue has been growing as well faster than population growth rate. Population has been growing by 1.6% year on year in the same period. So the revenue has really gone past population growth, gone past inflation rates as well. So they have strong revenue coming in, but they are failing to manage it really because of corruption is going on. And like we said earlier, there's a deficit of skills. There's a high vacancy rate in critical roles. So what happens now is the people, now of those who are even within those vacancy roles, the 75% on average who have filled the critical roles, of them that are already working in those roles, 50% of them are not competent enough, are not suitably qualified for the roles that they're serving in. So effectively, you could say there's only 35% of the staff complement effectively in critical roles that's serving there. So what happens now is when people begin to, when the private sector begins to submit, proposals for contracts, they submit proposals that are overvalued, that are not in line with specifications, and corruption itself is going on as well. So these are some of the things that, causing this the high growth in revenues really to fail to make an impact really, and residents continue to pay higher amount in rates, and they continue to be kind of exploited in a way, something like that, because they're not getting bang for their buck.
You propose linking municipal salaries to performance. How do you see that working in real life?
Well, look, critical roles are really what I'm focusing most on right now, because they're the most important and they're the ones that are most efficient if you look at the organizational structure of most municipalities. So I'm proposing that municipal critical roles, that technical directors, chartered financial officers, municipal managers, I'm proposing these senior staff, they have to be paid at rates actually which are higher than private sector rates, with the government subsidizing these extra payments. Why? Because we need to attract more of them into municipalities from the private sector to attract the best skills by paying higher rates. But these higher rates don't have to be fixed payments, no. They have to be sort of tailored to performance. So they're going to have to get higher payment rates than the private sector. And when that happens now, half of their salary, something of this sort, should be fixed, and the other half should be dependent on performance. If they fulfill what is in their job role, then they get their payment. If they go beyond expectations, then they get a bonus. If they fail to fulfill, then they get below what they should get, something of that sort. I don't know if it's making sense.
Yeah, it does. Your call for the public to be able to access real-time financial data on municipalities, how would this help to improve accountability?
Well, look, if the public has access to this data, they can quickly flag if they see, transactions which are not in line with procedures, transactions which are, inflated. They can quickly flag those. Because I propose that if the public should get access to all municipal financial transactions. If they can get access to all municipal financial transactions on a day-to-day basis, obviously they'll be accessing these online. If they can get all of them, they should at least get around 90% of these transactions. They should be able to access them, to check transactions on a day-to-day basis. How much did my municipality spend today? Was the expenditure inflated? Was there corruption? The public should be able to have access to this data. And when they have access to this data, if they find an anomaly, they should be able to refer it to the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, the NPA. They should be able to refer it to the Auditor General and those kinds of things. And when we have these systems in place, these truly democratic systems, you'll see that naturally you can estimate that they push municipal staff to be more professional, to be, to stop any kind of corrupt activities if they're involved in any.
You have made a lot of calls and a lot of proposals, certainly a lot of suggestions coming from your report. If you had the ear of our Minister of Cooperative Governance for 1 minute, what is the single most action that you'd say is urgent and that you would recommend to fix municipal failures?
Well, look, I will go back to the same issue that critical roles in municipalities, they need to be filled. They are vacant because, these job roles are getting salaries which are below private sector, rates, below market rates. So the minister would be pleased if he were to perhaps move with this, they have to ensure that they get payments which are above private sector payments. They should get salaries which are above market rates. But these salaries should not be fixed. These salaries should be higher than private sector rates, but they should be dependent on the performance of the municipal staff. And that's number one. And number two, perhaps just to say that I agree with his view, because already COGTA, Cooperative Government in Traditional Affairs, they released some information regarding them working on a white paper on municipal reform. And one of the things that the minister himself mentioned is that they intend as a ministry it's slipping my mind, I'm trying to bring it back. They intend as a ministry to merge, to combine municipalities so that the smaller ones, they get co-joined with the other ones, and then the smaller municipalities will eventually be larger. They intend to merge them. And so I would only like to say that I actually agree with him, because by virtue of merging the municipalities, then we will in another way be able to deal with the fuel deficit, because when we have 257 municipalities, perhaps we measure them into 120, if we had a vacancy rate of 25% in critical roles, essentially that means we're going to effectively have a vacancy rate of 12% in critical roles. By merging them, I don't know if this makes any sense, but I'm sure it does.
Thanks so much again for your time, Kevin. We appreciate it at Channel Africa.
Thank you too.
Kevin Tutani is a policy researcher and author of a paper titled Decisively Resolving Municipal Distress, sharing sharp insights on South Africa's struggling municipalities and what it will take to fix them.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Dissenting voices of close collaborators of President Paul Biya continue to echo, asking the non-Agrarian not to run in Cameroon's October presidential polls, accusing him of making Cameroon poor and bringing sufferings during his 42 years of leadership. Two government ministers appointed by Biya have already declared to run for president, saying that the 92-year-old is sick, hardly seen in public, and cannot rule. Moki Kinzaka reports that pressure on Biya not to run for president again is increasing in Cameroon.
Supporters rejoice as political leader Bello Buba Maigari, who is also Cameroon's senior minister in charge of tourism and leisure, announces that he will challenge the Central African state's long-serving leader Paul Biya in this year's presidential elections. Bello served as Cameroon Prime Minister under Biya, lost his position, and Biya again appointed him as Tourism and Leisure Minister. Bello says he has decided to challenge Biya in Cameroon's October presidential elections because civilians want a change. Paul Mbafo, one of Bello's close collaborators, says by deciding to challenge Biya, Bello has put a stop to a 30-year-old alliance with Paul Biya.
The summary of this is in one statement: break up. The National Union for Democracy and Progress has decided in a historic move to break up from the alliance that linked us or that bound us to the ruling regime. We have decided to go for the presidential elections 2025 October, and the candidate that was voted as our running head, our banner, is His Excellency Biruba Maigari, National Chairman of the NUDP.
Before Bello, who is the leader of the NUDP party, parted company with Biya, Issa Chiruma Bakari, another strong close collaborator of the president of Cameroon, also announced he would challenge Biya and resigned from his post as employment minister. Chiruma, also a former communication minister and government spokesperson under the Biya regime, said Paul Biya has rendered Cameroon poorer and underdeveloped than he met it when he rose to power 42 years ago. The opposition and civil society also say Biya is very old, sick, and is hardly seen in public, an indication that he no longer leads Cameroon. Civil society actor Akaba James says the resignations and the recent intimidation of supporters of opposition leader Maurice Kamto, a former minister who also resigned and will be challenging Biya, indicates the non-agenarian does not want to leave power.
It's a demonstration of how much Cameroonians are hungry for change. It also speaks about how active the youth want to be in engineering the change that Cameroonians want. To realize that, the government has been kind of making sure that things don't go the way they should go, or infringing on the simple civic liberties of citizens, is quite unfortunate. And what the government doesn't seem to realize is that the obstruction is rather making Professor Maurice Kamto and the MRC very popular, because people have a natural tendency to resist injustice. This is a country that purports itself to be a democracy, and the government, even the president, if you look at his Twitter page, he talks about the liberty, the freedoms, and people respecting the expressions, the opinions of others. And yet you have a whole police force just out to stop people in a year of campaign from exercising that basic citizenship duty, or that aspect of feeling a sense of belonging to a movement that can potentially bring transformation to the state. So it's quite unfortunate, and I think every step the government takes, they need to weigh it out, because it can lead to creating disorder, it can lead to an explosion, it can lead to a situation that people may not desire. So any action taken, they need to weigh, and sometimes some of those actions are not necessary because they are counterproductive.
Biya has ruled Cameroon for more than 4 decades. Opposition parties say he rules with an iron fist and wants to keep power until he dies. Biya has always claimed he won all elections after he constitutionally took power from Amadou Ahidjo, Cameroon's first president, in 1982. Ahidjo resigned after complaining of his failing health. Reporting for Channel Africa, this is Moki Kinzaka in Yaoundé, Cameroon.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
It's just a bit before 7:30 Central African Time. If you've just joined us here on Africa Rise and Shine, a very good morning to you. We're broadcasting live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. Let's check in with our news headlines now. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. 2 of Cameroon's government ministers appointed by President Paul Biya have already declared to run for presidency, saying the 92-year-old is sick and cannot rule. Dissenting voices of close collaborators of Biya continue to echo, asking him not to run in Cameroon's October presidential polls. More than 200,000 high school students in Sudan have started writing their 2024 final exams that were rescheduled because of the civil war. And Iran says over 900 people are now known to have been killed in the 12-day conflict with Israel and the U.S. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with the world of sports now. Here's Musibudi Makura with the details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the sports desk. In cricket news, Corbin Bosch claimed the wicket of Zimbabwean opener Taguzwanasha Kaiteno in the final over to leave the home team on 52 for 1 in 18.2 overs in their second innings, still 505 runs shy of the unlikeliest of victories on the third day of the first test at the Queen's Sports Club in Bulawayo on Monday. Early on the day, Vian Mulder's superb 147, his second and biggest test ton after his first against Bangladesh last year, had guided South Africa to 369 all out in their second innings, setting Zimbabwe a world record target of 537 for victory in more than 2 days. So Zimbabwe's problems were not entirely of their own making. They strike bowler Blessing Murazabani, excellent in the late spell on Sunday evening, was unable to bowl for most of South Africa's innings because he was feeling unwell. Even when he had recovered sufficiently to take the place on the field, he still had to wait until well into the afternoon session before he was able to bowl. In his absence, Zimbabwe had to rely on spinners Wellington Masagadza, part-timer Wesley Madhevere, as well as leggy Vincent Masekesa in support, and rather to support their sole paceman Tanaka Chivanga. So day 4 will start at 10:30 a.m. Central African time this morning. On to football news now. Brazilian club Fluminense shocked Inter Milan with a 2-0 win to reach the quarterfinals of the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup. The match was played in front of a crowd of just 20,000 in the final match of the 47,687 capacity Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. Now striker German Kano's stooping header in the third minute put the Brazilian Giants ahead very early, and then substitute Hercules scored a curling edge off the box shot against the run of play in a difficult last 25 minutes. Now Fluminense joined fellow Brazilian club Palmeiras in the quarterfinals and will play Al Hilal in the Camping World Stadium in Orlando on Friday for a place in the semi-finals. By the way, it was Al Hilal who shocked former champions Manchester City in the last round of 16 clash, beating the former champions 4-3 in extra time in the early hours of this morning. Well, we'll stay with the FIFA Club World Cup. Kylian Mbappe looks set to make his Club World Cup debut when his Real Madrid side will face Juventus in the last 16 at the Hard Rock Stadium today in a major boost for the 15-time European champions. Mbappe was hospitalized just last week after suffering from stomach flu. His return comes as Real Madrid look to build on a squad boosted by the recoveries of Dani Carvajal as well as Eder Militao. Now, Juventus coach Ego Tudor, meanwhile, acknowledged the magnitude of the challenge, that he also insisted his side had to come to compete, not just to prepare for next season. Tudor praised Real Madrid's recent tactical evolution under the new coach, Xavi Alonso, comparing it to the Alonso's successful work at Bayer Leverkusen just a few seasons ago. So the winners will take on the victors of the clash between Borussia Dortmund as well as Monterrey, who will then face off in Atlanta later on today in their last round of 16 clash. In rugby news now, Springbok forwards coach Dan Human says the South Africans were given a thorough test against the two of the best tight head props in French League when they scrummed down against the Barbarians. Human is now expecting more of the same against Italy when the incoming tour begins in Pretoria this weekend. The Springboks will play Italy twice, followed by Georgia, and then the forward pack in particular is relishing the challenge. Human explains just why that's the case.
The Barbarians is not playing week in, week out, so I don't think we tried to do a lot of analysis on them, especially individually, but unfortunately they haven't played the week before. So obviously you must go and have a look at all the different teams where they were playing. And we tried to have a look at them there. Obviously this week it's a proper test match team that plays regularly. So I think we can do even more homework on them. That's a big difference for me between the two.
And finally, in tennis news, two-time defending champion Carlos Alcaraz avoided a shock against Italian veteran Fabio Fognini in the Wimbledon first round to set up a meeting with British qualifier Oliver Tarvett. Now, Alcaraz had to dig deep to win that tie 7-5, 6-7, 7-5, 2-6 and 6-1 as he opened the centre court play on a sweltering first day of the grass court Grand Slam tournament. The 22-year-old Spaniard quickly secured victory when an entertaining contest resumed after a 15-minute pause in the fourth and deciding set. Alcaraz, who's the second seed behind Italian rival Yannick Sinner, struggled on serve and also made uncharacteristic errors of the ground throughout a 4.5-hour contest in temperatures topping 32 degrees Celsius. In his final Wimbledon appearance before his planned retirement, the 38-year-old Fognini twice fought back to force a decider, but Alcaraz regained control to extend his winning streak to 19 matches. Meanwhile, Alcaraz had good things to say about his opponent.
Well, first of all, to be honest, I don't know why is his last Wimbledon, because the level he has shown, he can still play in 3-4 more years. Unbelievable. I just I have to give him the credit of. I just had to give him the credit of such a great match. Fabio is a great player. He has shown during his whole career, the level and the talent he has.
And that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by The Upside with me, Tebohole Kuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel, and arts and culture, this is exactly the place to be.
Prepare to be delighted. If it's hip, if it's happening, we are talking about it. We talk about what's now, what's next, and most importantly, what matters most on the African continent and the diaspora.
Do you know what time it is? Catch us every weekday on Channel Africa from 1 to 4 p.m. Central African Time.
Yeah, that's us every weekday afternoon. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
Let's check in with the world of business. Here's Chanduko Ligege with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning. Mali has completed its takeover of the Yatela and Morila gold mines abandoned by their previous owners, but questions remain over how any untapped value can be released. The takeovers and failure to disclose how the operations will be funded highlight the complex challenges facing Mali as it seeks to regain control of its natural resources and leverage high commodity prices to boost the economy, mirroring moves by other West African states, including Burkina Faso and Niger. Mali's military leaders, who took power after coups in 2020 and 2021, announced their intention to nationalize the mines last year. In East Africa, Kenya's inflation was at 3.8% year-on-year in June, same level as the previous month. In a statement, the Kenya Bureau of Statistics says inflation was primarily driven by the rise in prices of items such as food and non-alcoholic beverages, transport and housing. Monthly inflation was at 0.5% in June, same as a month earlier. The central bank targets Kenya's inflation to be within the 2.5% to 7.5% range in the medium term. In June, the bank cut its benchmark lending rate by 25 basis points to 9.75%, saying it wanted to provide further support to the economy. The National School Nutrition Program Services Providers Association in South Africa has expressed concern on the rising prices of zero-rated food items. It says the situation has complicated its ability to supply food to schools. The association says despite being exempt from taxation, the rising prices are making it difficult to keep up with the current budget from government. The association's chairperson Lindani Matiwane has called for urgent government intervention.
The government just give us the allocation price and they give us the commodities, how many do we have to source out, and we go out to all of those respectable or known outlets. We went and buy, and we try to negotiate good prices to whoever that will give us good prices. What is happening as it is now, each and every time whenever the schools are closed, whenever we come back, there is an increase.
Still in South Africa, legal analyst Elton Hart says there is apparent flouting of processes in the packaging of charges on the matter involving 4 former South African transport company Transnet executives. They are out on bail of over $2,800 each. The executives, including former CEO Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama, appeared in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Johannesburg. They are linked to alleged multi-million-dollar fraud and corruption cases involving tenders to acquire new locomotives. Hart believes the current charges should be added to the 2022 charges, wherein the group was similarly charged in the corruption case involving the procurement of 1,062 locomotives.
I think them now going in small chunks after these guys might just distort the state's case instead of helping the state's case to actually prove that there was a flouting of processes. I would think that you should be actually compacting these things and actually combining them to actually prove that on a number of occasions this was the modus operandi of the group and this is how they flouted the process, instead of trying this piece here and trying that piece there, trying to create a bigger picture. I think it will complicate the case more than helping the case.
U.S. stocks closed on record highs yesterday, ending the second quarter of the year on an optimistic note. Possible trade deals between the U.S. and foreign governments, as well as hopes of interest rate cuts, have encouraged investors. The S&P 500 has gained 10.5% over the quarter, while the Nasdaq has risen nearly 18%. Share prices fell sharply in April when Washington unveiled huge tariffs with its trading partners worldwide. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 537, Botswana 13 Pula 21, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 495, Zambia 23 kwacha 79. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 46, Russia 78 rubles 16, India 85 rupees 62, China 7 yuan 16, South Africa 17 rand 74 cents. $1 is at 72 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,322, platinum at $1,353 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $66.41 a barrel. That is all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
July is Mental Illness Awareness Month. Mental illness refers to a wide range of mental health conditions or disorders that affect a person's mood, thinking, and behavior. South African Dr. Siyamak Saleh uses social media to break down stigmas surrounding mental health issues, making complex health topics accessible and engaging. He says mental health is a universal issue and it's vital to break the stigma surrounding it.
Mental health is as important as your physical health. Like imagine a bird cannot fly if one of the wings is not healthy. Like one wing would be like representing the physical health and the other one is the mental health. And because of all this misinformation that are out there and talking about mental health is kind of like a taboo. So the fact that we're starting a conversation like this, we are breaking barriers and educating the public so they can be aware of science. That means you're struggling and need to seek help with mental health and raising awareness for people to just take active care of their mental health.
You've just said you've got about 4 million followers on social media. How do you use social media to raise awareness on health issues?
I offer, as a medical doctor, obviously you cannot give advice or diagnosis online. So what I'm doing is raising awareness, for example, mental health. For example, if you are avoiding people, struggling to sleep, you're irritable, you eat losing weight or you gaining weight, or like you have these symptoms, or you are like numb to feelings. I educate the public. So if you have these symptoms or you think you are struggling, go seek professional help or at least speak to someone you trust. You are not alone, because people feel when they're having a mental health issue, they're like alone. Nobody is there for them. You are not alone. There's always somebody who I'm sure you trust that can listen to you. There are online services or call services that you can reach out if you are struggling. And of course, the professional help, the therapists, doctors that can give you the guidance.
And is mental health easily diagnosed? What are the symptoms to look out for?
As I mentioned earlier, obviously mental health and psychiatry is a whole specialty. There are obviously specialists who can do this thing. But if you're talking about burnout or loneliness, these are all part of your mental health. As I mentioned earlier, like some of the most common symptoms is if you are like feeling sad for an extended period of time, or if you are numb to feelings, or if you are feeling like you want to sleep the whole time, or your appetite is increasing or decreasing, feeling irritable, avoiding people. These are some of the general signs that would be advisable to seek professional help and make sure you are doing well.
How do events like this address the stigma that's associated with mental illness?
Starting conversation about mental health is like a huge thing. As I mentioned, it's like a taboo in many cultures, even in Africa, people struggle to admit that they need mental health, or mental health is a thing in some areas even. So the fact that TikTok is raising awareness and empowering creators, someone like me and my other health creators, to go online and talk about these issues, raising awareness, they are making sure we are protected, our content are getting the boost they need to be seen by as many people as possible. And the fact that they have collaborated with the World Health Organization, the most credible public health organization out there, it shows how serious they are to address mental health, because even being online, it can affect your mental health. So TikTok even putting the measures there so you can protect your own mental health. But as I mentioned in the panel, you can report people, you can report comments, you can block them, delete them, you can put timers to remind you that you're spending, like, you want to spend 30 minutes a day, then you put a timer, you put timers on reminders or what time you want to sleep, so your phone gives you a reminder it's time to sleep, puts you like this calming music that you can listen and fall asleep with. There is a option where you can see how many hours you spend in a week, so you can adjust if it's too much. So the fact that they're also doing all these things and raising awareness and doing all these measures, it's very plausible.
That was Dr. Siyamak Saleh. He was speaking to Nhlanhla Mahlangu at a digital well-being summit in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Bana Boy huyo anajulikana kama Damini Ebunoluwa Ogolo maarufu kama Bana Boy. Alizaliwa Julai 2 mwaka 1991. Ni mwimbaji na mwandishi wa nyimbo kutoka nchini Nigeria. Alipata umaarufu mnamo mwaka 2012 baada ya kutoa wimbo wake wa kwanza kabisa ambao ulijulikana kwa jina la Like to Party kutoka ndani ya studio Live 2013. Mnamo mwaka wa 2017 Bana Boy alisaini na bendi Habit Atlantic Records huko Marekani na One Music Group. Albamu yake ya tatu ya studio ya nje 2018 iliweka alama ya kwanza ya lebo yake. Mnamo mwaka 2019 alishinda sheria ya kimataifa ya bora kabisa kwenye tuzo za BET za 2019. Alitangazwa pia kama msanii wa Apple Music's Up Next.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Zochitika ndi madapiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna waza malonda kumalawi aletsa kampani yopanga sugar ya Irovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Irovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza sugar kumaiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya za malonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti sugar yemwe yakusowa pamsika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti sugar azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti sugar azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Irovo Sugar Malawi kunena kuti sakutha kupanga sugar okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya sugar kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula sugar kaya ndi ku Irovo kaya ndi kusalima sugar akumagulisa kumaiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
Zochitika ndi madapiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. Bringing you the energy, news and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's talk the South African Federation of Trade Unions now, SAFTU, who have hailed the arrests of former Transnet executives over corruption charges. SAFTU says the arrest of Brian Molefe, Anoj Singh, Siyabonga Gama and Thamsanqa Jiyane is significant towards the curb of corruption in the country. They are facing fraud and corruption allegations involving tenders to acquire 95 new locomotives. The union warns the National Prosecuting Authority that failure to secure convictions risks further eroding public trust. We now speak to General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions, Zwelinzima Vavi. Thank you so much, Zwelinzima, for your time. How are you on this Tuesday?
Good morning to you and good morning to everybody listening to you. Thank you very much for inviting us.
It's our pleasure. The former Transnet executives were in court over a multi-billion rand locomotive deal, this dating back to 2011. What was this deal meant to achieve for those non-South African listeners that we have on the show?
Well, you will remember that there are two important reports that came out on this one. The first one came out in 2017 by the public protector, whose findings was that somewhere in February, before that, these findings in the Zondo Commission would have come out in February in 2022. So the public protector and the Zondo Commission would have told the country that there were 1,259 locomotives contracts that were irregularly awarded to a China company called the All China Rail. And this was done at the expense of a local company called the Union Carriage and Wagon in Niger, which was deliberately excluded, and that as a result of that, the Zondo Commission recommended that criminal prosecution must follow. So this is a sequence to that 2017 Public Protector report. Its report was called the Report of the Public Protector on the investigation into allegations of improper conduct relating to the procurement of rolling stock by Transnet. And so finally, after this long process, you can imagine waiting for justice before 2017 until now, we finally can now say the workers who lost their jobs at a local company called the Union Carriage and Wagon in Nigeria, in the East Rand or Eguruleni, are now finally smiling that at least justice is beginning to take its course.
And it's been some time. So how have South Africa's rail and road pipelines been impacted as a result of this case?
Terribly, because it meant that we robbed South Africa industrial capacity, and you know that robbing South Africa's industrial capacity have led to, in the overall, a decline of our manufacturing sector, which used to contribute 22% to the GDP, is now down to 12%. We now having a idling capacity of 22% in the economy of South Africa. The investment has been very slow, resulting in this 0.1, 0.2% GDP growth, as the bosses are now hoarding a 1.7 trillion rands investable cash that could be deployed in the economy. We normally condemn this practice as being unpatriotic, but when you read reports such as that coming from the Public Protector and the Zondo Commission, you sometimes sympathize with the bosses that are reluctant to invest in the economy, as we now know that the biggest investment activity in South Africa happens in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, where the economy have been turned into a casino. And secondly, that they are making 4% in profit by just putting their money in the banks is in part, not in a small way, as a result of the scale of corruption happening in the private sector and through the crooks that at the time were regarded as heroes by the people who still see absolutely nothing wrong with the activities of these guys. So finally, we can now say at least we're beginning to see signs that justice is going to be realized in South Africa. We are obviously very cautious because the NPA has proven its inability to prosecute high-profile cases. Look at the collapse of the Matsela Koko prosecution. Look at the stillborn Estina dairy farm case. Look at the delays in holding the people who looted the VBS Mutual Bank, and look at many other cases. And we hope that they have learned their lessons, that they are not rushing this case to court in order to settle political scores in any way, but they are going to use effectively the Public Protector's report and the Zondo Commission's report to ensure that the four people that were appearing in court yesterday, Brian Molefe, Anoj Singh, Siyabonga Gama, and Tamsang Najiane, are rot in jail, basically, because that's what they deserve. Stealing from the private sector or public sector is the worst enemy for workers, because out of corruption, we lose our jobs, as the case is in relation to the Union Carriage and Wagon.
Just briefly, in about 30 seconds, because we run out of time, will the executives repay the money laundered? It was referred to as laundering. Previously, one of them, Brian Molefe, was ordered to repay an illegal pension payout he gave himself from Eskom, South Africa's electricity supplier. Should they be held liable in a similar manner?
We believe so. We believe so. In fact, the NPA must gun to get all of the rands and the cents that were stolen from South Africa's public back into the public coffers. We still need that capacity to build carriages here in South Africa to make sure that the 80% of workers now using private transport go back to using the public transport again.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks again for your time, Zwelinzima. Zwelinzima Mavavi is General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. It's now 8 o'clock Central African time as we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. We say good morning to you. My name is Asanda Beda. Let's go. Here's Onele Nzinzi, and then following her is Sports Headlines by Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Two of Cameroon's government ministers appointed by President Paul Biya have already declared they will run for presidency, saying that 92-year-old is sick, hardly seen in public, and cannot rule. Dissenting voices of close collaborators of Biya continue to echo, asking him not to run in Cameroon's October presidential polls and accusing him of making Cameroon poor during his 42 years of leadership. Moki Kinzeka reports that pressure on Biya not to run for president again is increasing in Cameroon.
The opposition and civil society also say Biya is very old, sick, and is hardly seen in public, an indication that he no longer leads Cameroon. Biya has ruled Cameroon for more than 4 decades. Opposition parties say he rules with an iron fist and wants to keep power until he dies.
More than 200,000 high school students in Sudan have started writing their 2024 final exams that were rescheduled because of the civil war. The Sudanese government says it will block internet services across the country during the exams to prevent cheating. The BBC's Andrew Ochieng.
The tests are being held only in areas controlled by the army and in several external examination centres, including refugee camps in neighbouring countries. Critics have said this move will deepen the polarization caused by the war. Local media say the army's rival, the Rapid Support Forces, have considered holding their own exams in the areas they rule. The government has not said how many eligible candidates are likely to miss the tests, but in December last year, when the students started the 2023 exams, it's believed more than 60% of pupils missed them.
The Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa says it will be laying criminal charges against the Minister of Education and Training, Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane, today ahead of her tabling the department's budget vote in the National Council of Provinces. The party says while President Cyril Ramaphosa continues to take no action against the African National Congress Party corruption in the executive, it will use every means to fight it. Over the weekend, it announced that it will not support the budget votes of ministers it deemed are compromised. This after giving Ramaphosa an ultimatum of 48 hours to remove Nkabane, Human Settlement Minister Thembi Simelane, and Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation David Mahlobo. Thus, in light of the firing of the Deputy of Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Andrew Whitfield, following the expiry of the 48 hours, the DA announced it would withdraw support for the budgets of these ministries as well as its participation in the August National Dialogue. A new study predicts that more than 14 million of the world's most vulnerable people could die in the next 5 years because of the dismantling of the main U.S. aid agency. President Donald Trump's administration has made funding cuts to U.S. aid and its aid program worldwide. The U.S. government said this is part of its broader plan to remove wasteful spending. The study has been published as U.S. aid is formally closed as an independent agency 6 decades after it was set up. The BBC's Grant Ferret reports.
The figures contained in the research published by the Lancet Medical Journal are staggering. Their scale reflects just how central USAID has become to the global humanitarian effort. According to the study, the agency averted more than 90 million deaths worldwide in the 2 decades up to 2021. Many were related to HIV prevention. About 80% of USAID's funding is being cut, and from Tuesday it will be officially absorbed into the US State Department. Critics say the sudden, largely unplanned nature of the change is especially damaging.
Lastly, Iran says at least 935 people are now known to have been killed in the 12 days conflict with Israel and the US. The country's judiciary says the number includes 38 children and 132 women. The BBC's Liz Duché, who is in Tehran, reports.
On the seventh day of a fragile ceasefire, Iran is still burying the dead. This is for family members of the scientists killed in the last hours before the ceasefire took hold. The smallest coffin is of a 6-year-old boy. Scenes like this heighten the anger among Iranians, whether or not they support their government over this war. A war in which Israel said it was only targeting military and nuclear sites. It's clear that civilians were also suffering.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, South Africa said Zimbabwe a world target of 537 to win the first test match, while Daniel Medvedev suffers a shock first round Wimbledon exit on Monday. Details coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 8 Central African Time. So Somalia commemorates Somali Day today, a day the country separated from colonial rule in 1960. The annual commemoration was held on June 26 as a symbol of the country's quest for sovereignty and cohesion, even amid ongoing political complexities and calls for secession from Somaliland. Somalia, officially the Federal Republic of Somalia, is the easternmost country in Africa, located in the Horn of Africa, and borders Ethiopia to the west, Djibouti to the northwest, Kenya to the southwest, the Gulf of Aden to the north, and the Indian Ocean to the east. To discuss the significance of this day, we speak to Professor Mamu Muchi, who is a Professor of Technology Innovation Studies at the China University of Technology. Professor Muchi, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
How are you? Thank you very much for always focusing on important African problems.
Well, thanks so much, and we appreciate your time on these important topics. Let's start first, Professor, with background on this day, especially the lead up to July 1st.
Yes, the first Independence Day was June 26, but Somalia has two independent days. Yeah, June 26 and July 1st. There were two areas that united. One is called the British Somaliland, and the other one was called the Italian Somaliland. So the two Somalilands were not free at the same time. They were in different times. So when the unity happens, they started July 1 to be the day for the celebration of both of them. That's what they have done. The problem with Somalia is that it was divided by the British, the French, the Italians. So you have different, areas. The northern part is with the British, and the other parts, the Italian. So you had these divisions, and this has also affected the attitude of the people. Those who are in the British side feel differently from those who are from the Italian and the French side. So we still have this colonial mentality not removed, and that is a serious issue. As you know, after the unity, Somalia should never have been in conflict, but there has been a number of conflicts going on. Even now, you have the Somali Republic, then you have a Somaliland also state, which is separate from each other, and then they still are in a difficult situation, and conflicts continue. And I think the entire Horn of Africa area should not be in this situation. We should learn very much now from Ibrahim Traore. You know what he has done? He united, sincerely speaking, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. They have one flag, and they are saying now they want to really work very hard to make sure that all the resources these countries have must be developed so that the people in this region will all completely be free from poverty, and they will completely be able to have employment and things like that. I think that's a bit, that kind of lesson is what I hope on this day, on Independence Day, the Somali people and the Somali government and all the stakeholders must learn to value, cherish, and say we must unite the entire, like what Ibrahim Traore and his team did. Let's do more. Something like that is what I think they should do.
It is
That's my
always
suggestion.
about the people. Professor, I'm being informed by my technical producers there's a bit of a technical issue we need to solve. If you can just stay on the line and we try and fix that as we continue with this important chat. Somalia officially marking 65 years of independence. All right, I understand you're fine now, Professor Muchi. Let's continue then on that point of it being about the people. How do ordinary Somali residents usually mark and celebrate this day? What kind of festivities do they plan?
I think they have lots of festivities they do. They do all the march, the sings, the cultural things, many activities they do. That's what they do when they celebrate. But the important point is the celebration side is fine. It's good. They do the cultural things and they manifest it nicely. But the important thing is still they are a country that are one language, almost one religion, the Sunni. They Islamic religion they do, and they, you know, why do they have this separation even now? The separation came, as I mentioned to you, with the colonial powers. At the same time, the clan. They have different clans. The Darud, they have different clans, and then the clans also don't agree with each other. So this is like tribalism. So I think the important thing is the celebration side is fine, but the important point is with the celebration, can they also change the attitude, the mindset, so that they can unite? They not only become Somalis, also Africans. They also have links with, as you mentioned it, also with all the different regions, the boundaries you mentioned, but also they have links with the Arabs. They have different links from different parts of the world. So it would be nice if they also really learn to actually connect with all the areas in the Horn of Africa. For example, Djibouti, Ethiopia, so Eritrea, all these areas, Kenya, Sudan, all these areas, we still have conflicts everywhere. So it might be very good that on this day of independence, they say, let's remove conflict, let's unite, let's also celebrate and do the singing or the dancing or the cultural songs and everything we do to actually educate even the young generation to do that. Something like that is what I recommend strongly that they do. That's my suggestion.
On that point of unity, Professor, as you speak of taking example from Ibrahim Traore wanting to unify and collaborate his country, Burkina Faso with Mali, with Niger. One of Africa's largest refugee camps is in the Dadaab refugee camp, which is in Kenya, housing over 830,000 refugees from Somalia and South Sudan. How has Kenya done in granting legal protections to the people of Somalia? If we talk of unity and integration in the region, are they accessing their full rights as they should?
I think it's an important question you asked. The refugees because the conflict areas are many. You have so many refugees going and then suffering. For example, I must tell you that you may not have known, there are even refugees from Ethiopia, going to Sudan. Can you imagine? And there are also refugees going from different parts to Kenya. But at least in Kenya, with all the challenges Kenya has, it's relatively very stable and more peaceful. Because of that, I think the Kenyans definitely will use regulation to make sure that the refugees are protected. I think that's what I think will happen from the Kenya side. But if the number of refugees keep growing, it may not be possible for them also to handle it very well. That's also the other challenge Kenya may have. And I think the international organizations and all this, there are so many committees to help refugees, but what you see is the problem is more than what you see is a solution. We shouldn't be in this situation where we make refugees in our areas in Africa. We should have by now united Africa. We started African unity 62 years ago, and Kwame Nkrumah said Africa must unite or perish, but nothing has happened. So until now, and I think we have a serious problem, because if we don't unite, why do we need to create refugees from each other? We should not be refugees with each other. We should be united. We should be supporting each other, and we should have citizenships and rights, and even we should have a passport that is that will make us all move freely. Others are doing it. The Europeans and others are going in that direction. Why are we dividing ourselves and making ourselves refugees from each other? I think it's very good, and I think that has to change in the African side. That's my suggestion.
It's 17 minutes past 8 Central African time. If you've just joined us on Africa Rise and Shine, we're in conversation with Professor Mamo Muchi, Professor of Technology Innovation Studies at the China University of Technology, based in South Africa, in Pretoria, or the area of Pretoria. Tainting the Independence Day celebrations of Somalia, Professor, was as last night, on the eve of Somali Day, the public was prohibited to gather due to security concerns, according to the Eastleigh Business District Association, based in Kenya, with a big focus on the Somalia or the Somali community there in the country. They were linking this concern to June 26 violence by armed groups. Was this violence valid enough to even want to stop Independence Day celebrations, in your view?
No, I think it's sad to hear that on the Independence Day they have this challenge. But then you see, Somalia also suffers from a very sad Al-Shabaab. Remember the extremists, the Islamic extremist group is also, the Islamic philosophy. They value universal love and kindness to humanity as a whole, and that's what's that's a vision, and they have. But what you have is, even they divide each other with Shia and Sunni, and they divide each other with with Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, all these things. Even when you have a Liberation Day celebration like today, the Independence Day, even all these factions will create problems. And as you mentioned now, it's actually happening, and it's affecting when they should be celebrating and dancing and singing. Some of them are in a difficult situation where they feel threatened. on even on Independence Day. This is very sad and very, something that should never have happened at all. And I think that they should prevent this. There should be some dialogue culture, some debates, some discussion, some education, moral education, intellectual education, emotional education must be really shared to all of them so that they can value and respect the Independence Day. And from Independence Day, they develop more independence. That includes all of them and all the people. No people should suffer. That's what should be happening. That's my suggestion.
What have previous celebrations informed into this concern of security threats? Is violence a typical occurrence during commemorations when it comes to Somali's Independence Day?
That's really, again, it shouldn't happen. What I can only say that why we're having this kind of difficulties because of the factions, the differences, the competitions, the power seeking, and also the divisions by clan divisions, and all these things still affect the country, and even the colonial legacy has not been removed, because those that are British Somaliland, they feel more superior to those that are Italian Somaliland. This kind of things is what you hear from the people. So I think that what you just said is very important. There should not have been any conflict at all on this Independence Day. Only celebration should have been the priority of priorities. I think that's what I recommend. That it happened is just not really for the whole of Somalia. This is not just those people that are affected, but the entire Liberation Day, Independence Day is also sidelined by this kind of action that they take. That's my suggestion.
How should the youth galvanize itself to create a unified and collective voice when it comes to addressing the challenges faced in the country, but more importantly, to advocate for solutions to these challenges? More than half of Somali refugees are under the age of 18.
Yeah, that's very important. The youth is the most important part in any, not just in Somalia, all of Africa. Nearly 72% of the people in all of Africa are the youth. So what we need to work on, all of us, is to make the youth change makers and game changers, not the youth to engage in all the strange things. Now with all this digital technology, we don't want them to also get into this conflicts and fightings and so on like that. No. We should really frame the education system very well to make sure that we have a better education system. We are now creating a new university called Osiri University. We are now creating this university based on the principle of Ubuntu, the values that have been created in our beautiful land, South Africa. Our ancestors have created it from. They are African ancestors from South Africa. And that value will not create any of these conflicts you just mentioned, because the youth must learn to value each other, to say, you are me, I'm you. This kind of value is what we need. Not I think, therefore I am, but I am because we are. This kind of value is very, very critical. We have to make the education system, the moral intelligence must be very strong, and the youth must be the ones that are very, very important because there are many in Africa, not just Somalia, but all over Africa. So I think our focus must be on educating them and really making sure that they become the change makers and really make sure that the Africa, which has the richest resources on this planet, we should not make any youth to be in a situation where they are engaged in conflict. Remove conflict completely. Bring peace and security for all. That's what we should work for. I think that's my suggestion.
The way you see it, Professor, is there willingness amongst the youth of Somalia to galvanize themselves to see change in their country? We know when young people are spearheading things like protests, even social media hashtags and movements, there seems to be attention given.
Yeah, that's what you're saying is very important. The youth have to be motivated, encouraged, stimulated to make sure that they do not get distracted by all these factors, the divisive factors from every side. They must be galvanized, as you say, on the direction where they are more innovative, inventive, creative, all right, and then entrepreneurial, and more that kind of knowledge is what they should be learning. And they should also learn how to collaborate, not to divide themselves, but find ways by which they can work together, and mutually beneficial relations is what they should be hoping to do and work to do. Something like that is what I think should be encouraged. That galvanization is what should be motivated. This is not just done by them, but even the government, the universities, all the stakeholders, the communities, the families, everyone should be engaged to make sure that the change is made. And also even when they go to churches and so on, and the mosques, not good to just go and preach. And then you go to the priest, the church, the mosque, you preach and you go out and you start fighting and killing each other. This is not fair. This is very unethical, unjust. And this injustice must be removed. Something like that is what I strongly recommend, that they should be changing them completely. And if this paradigm shift is not done from conflict to peace and resolution of all the challenges the youth face, not to put them unemployable, employable, and living in poverty and migrating and being in all kinds of destitute areas is not good. That's not what they should be doing. That's my suggestion.
Generally, what has the spillover been in terms of Somalia's security crisis as it affects other countries within the region and those who are neighboring? You speak of international integration going to be something that's important, regional integration going to be something that's important in collaboration with Somalia to achieve better security for itself. But generally, what's the spillover been and the consequences for the continent of the security threats and violence in Somalia?
You see, you asked that question already. Remember, we had war in 1977 and 78, the Ogaden War between Ethiopia and Somalia, and still the situation, the resolution among the areas, like the relationship between Djibouti, Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia, in that Horn of Africa region is not resolved yet. It also internally, the Somalis themselves are, as I mentioned to you, the clan division also exists. So they also, as I mentioned to you, the Al-Shabaab on the Muslim side, the Sunnis and the Shias, they don't agree with each other. So the conflicts, the resources that would exacerbate conflict is still there. The important problem now is how to handle all of them and who can be involved to support them. I mean, among even the government in Somalia and the governments in all these areas in the Horn of Africa, the Africa Union, all the forces that are meant to support unity and peace, they must also be engaged. And some solution must be found, not more conflict. The more conflict creates more difficulty for everyone. So the potential for the conflict still exists, but ways must be found to make sure that the conflict direction is not to be followed ever again. Something like that is what I think should be done. And it's not easy to do it, but I think all the actors must be learn from all the mistakes that have been done, from all the damages, the wars, the conflicts that have been going on. They should learn not to continue it. Something like that is what and then some ideas of reconciliations, all these ideas must also be promoted. If that happens, then the solution will go well. That's my suggestion.
Professor, thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it as Channel Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Mamo Muchi, Professor of Technology Innovation Studies at the Tshwane University of Technology in South Africa, talking about Somalia officially marking its 65 years of independence from colonial rule. Well, we just say, I guess for now, wishing the people of Somalia a progressive Independence Day. It's not a happy one. Stay with us on Channel Africa. 8:30 Central African time it is now. Let's say good morning to Onel Nsinsi. She's got our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. A Tunisian court has sentenced a prominent lawyer, Sonia Damani, and critical voice of President Kais Saied to 2 years in prison. A case rights groups say marks a deepening crackdown on dissent in the North African country. Two of Cameroon's government ministers appointed by President Paul Biya have declared they will run for presidency this year, saying that the 92-year-old is sick and cannot rule. And Britain's High Court has ruled that the government's decision to export military equipment to Israel is lawful, despite accepting it could be used in breaches of international humanitarian aid in Gaza. Channel Africa News, I'm Onel Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's the latest with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the sports desk for the final time this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. We'll start with the story. So Proteas all-rounder Jan Mulder was more relieved than ecstatic after scoring his second Test 100 in less than 12 months when he led the South African side to a commanding 369 in their second innings against Zimbabwe in Bulawayo on Monday. The 27-year-old scored his first ton against Bangladesh last year and says getting to triple figures in Test cricket is always a big achievement. Mulder says as much as it's a good personal milestone, the important thing now is helping the team win this match.
Yeah, I've worked really hard on my batting. I always have. I've been someone who's batted in the top 4, top 5 most of my career. And it's been in the Test team, I've always had to kind of figure things out. I think Test cricket is incredibly hard. And yeah, there's no easy runs in Test cricket. So having more than one century for my country is really special, especially in Test cricket. So.
Now, with a massive lead of 505 going into day 4 of the match, it's easy for complacency to creep in. Mulder says they will need to strike as early as possible in the morning to not give their opponents any sniff of getting back into the game and also avoid frustration as the day progresses. Nick Walsh will join Kai Teno at the crease with the wicket of Prince Masuvere, the only one to have fallen for the hosts' side on a monumental clash on Monday night.
To be honest, I thought we bowled really nicely. I thought Kwena bowled with very good energy. I thought Cody bowled with very good energy. I thought Boshi bowled with very good energy. And there was a lot for Keshav as well. So I think if we can break the back of the Zimbabwean batting lineup in the middle with Williams and Irvine and Welsh, I think it'll put us in a good position to win the game. But I think the important thing is how we start the first session tomorrow. I know we got that wicket tonight, which probably puts that session in our favour.
On to football news now. Kylian Mbappe looks set to make his FIFA Club World Cup debut when his Real Madrid side face Juventus in the last 16 at the Hard Rock Stadium today in a major boost for the 15-time European champions. Mbappe was hospitalized just last week after suffering from stomach flu. His return comes as Real Madrid look to build on a squad boosted by the recoveries of Dani Carvajal as well as Eder Militao. Juventus head coach Igor Tudor also acknowledged the magnitude of the challenge, but also insisted his side had come to compete and not just to prepare for next season. Tudor praised Real Madrid's recent tactical evolution under the new coach Xabi Alonso, also comparing it to Alonso's successful work at Bayer Leverkusen. The winners will take on the victors of the clash between Borussia Dortmund as well as Monterrey, who face off in Atalanta in the other last round of 16 clash later on today. In tennis news now, world number 33 Julia Putintseva raised security concerns about a spectator during a first-round match at Wimbledon, asking for them to be ejected. Now, early in her match against Amanda Anisimova on court 15, the 30-year-old complained directly to the Empire about a spectator whom she described as crazy and dangerous. A club spokesperson said the matter was dealt with. Now, during a change of ends, when trailing 3-love in the opening set, Putintseva from Kazakhstan first voiced her concerns. She was then seen pointing towards an area of the crowd and also described the person as wearing green. The chair umpire came down onto the court and spoke to 3 members of the security staff. When Putintseva was then told play would resume, she was heard saying she did not want to play until security handled the issue. Now, Putintseva was quite emotional later in a match and went on to lose that match 6-love and 6-love in just 45 minutes. And finally, 2-time defending champion Carlos Alcaraz avoided a defeat and a shock against Italian veteran Fabio Fognini in the Wimbledon first round to set up a meeting with British qualifier Oliver Tarvet. Now, Alcaraz dug deep to win that tie 7-5, 6-7, 7-5 and 6-1 as he opened the centre court play on sweltering first day of the grass court Grand Slam tournament. The 22-year-old Spaniard quickly secured victory when an entertaining contest resumed after a 15-minute pause in the deciding set. Alcaraz, who was is the second seed in this year's tournament behind Italian rival Yannick Sinner, struggled on serve and also made uncharacteristic errors of the ground throughout a 4.5-hour contest in temperatures also topping 32 degrees Celsius. In his final Wimbledon appearance before his planned retirement, 38-year-old Fognini fought twice back to force the decider, but Alcaraz regained control to extend his winning streak to 19 matches. That's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Wake up, Africa. Beda, Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's check in with the world of business now as Chanduko Likeke gives us our business news. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Energy and water experts from the SADC region have gathered in Harare, Zimbabwe to address challenges in electricity production and improve water management across the region. Electricity shortages plague the entire region largely due to climate change-induced droughts severely impacting power generation. Over the next 5 days, senior government officials and ministers responsible for energy and water will discuss strategies to unlock access to reliable, affordable and sustainable energy, which is crucial for powering economies. John Kasim filed this report.
The Southern African Development Community, SADC, is convening the joint meeting of the committees of ministers responsible for energy and responsible for water in Harare this week. This ministerial meeting, which aims to strengthen regional collaboration and assess progress on key initiatives in the energy and water sectors, started Monday with senior officials meeting for the next 4 days. The joint ministerial session will coincide with the 30th anniversary of the Southern African Power Tool, established by a council decision in August 1995.
Mali has completed its takeover of the Yatela and Morila gold mines abandoned by their previous owners, but questions remain over how any untapped value can be released. The takeovers and failure to disclose how the operations will be funded highlight the impact challenges facing Mali as it seeks to regain control of its natural resources and leverage high commodity prices to boost the economy, mirroring moves by other West African states including Burkina Faso and Niger. Mali's military leaders who took power after coups in 2020 and 2021 announced their intentions to nationalize the mines last year. Kenya's inflation was at 3.8% year-on-year in June, same level as the previous month. In a statement, the Kenya Bureau of Statistics says inflation was primarily driven by the rise in prices of items such as food and non-alcoholic beverages, transport and housing. Monthly inflation was at 0.5% in June, same as a month earlier. The central bank targets Kenya's inflation to be within 2.5% to 7.5% range in the medium term. In June, the bank cut its benchmark lending rate by 25 basis points to 9.75%, saying it wanted to provide further support to the economy. The 4 accused former executives of South African state-owned rail company Transnet will be back in the specialized commercial court sitting in the Palm Ridge Magistrate Court in Ekurhuleni on October the 6th. Brian Mulife, Siyabonga Gama, Anoj Singh and Tamsanqa Giane appeared in court yesterday and were granted bail of $2,824 each. They are facing fraud and corruption allegations involving tenders to acquire new locomotives. The accused handed themselves to police in southern Johannesburg to face fresh charges involving the acquisition of 95 locomotives. In 2022, they were arrested on similar charges involving the procurement of 1,062 locomotives. The National School Nutrition Program Service Providers Association in South Africa has expressed concern on the rising prices of zero-rated food items. It says the situation has complicated its ability to supply food to schools. The association says despite being exempt from taxation, the rising prices are making it difficult to keep up with the current budget from government. The association's chairperson, Lindani Matiwane, has called for urgent government intervention.
The government just give us the allocation price and they give us the commodities, how many do we have to source out. And we go out to all of those respectable or known outlets. We went and buy and we try to negotiate good prices to whoever that will give us good prices. What is happening as it is now, each and every time whenever the schools are closed, whenever we come back, there is an increase.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira, 537. In Botswana, 13 pula 21. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling, 495. Zambia, 23 kwacha, 79. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 46. Russia, 78 rubles 16. India, 85 rupees 62, China 7 yuan 16, South Africa 17 rand 74 cents. $1 is at 72 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $3,330, platinum at $1,352 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $66.41 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 117144459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
It's 44 minutes past 8 Central African Time as global leaders convene in Seville for the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. New figures from UNESCO's Global Education Monitoring Report paint a worrying picture for the future of education. Despite education being key to economic growth, social stability and peace, international aid is in steep decline. Aid to education is projected to fall by 25% by 2027, leaving low-income countries facing a $97 billion annual funding gap. Joining us now is Manos Antoninis, Director of the Global Education Monitoring Report, to unpack these findings. Manos, thank you for making time for us on Tuesday morning. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, thank you. It's a very hot day in Paris, where I'm calling from.
Oh, well, we wish we were there because we are very cold in Johannesburg, South Africa. Lucky you. What do the latest figures tell us about the state of global aid to education?
Well, you just shared with your audience the headline. A quarter of aid is expected to be written off by 2027. It could even be more. Our estimates are based on two pieces of information. We have already heard since the beginning of the year, starting with the United States and then with a number of European governments, that they plan to cut considerably, in some cases almost completely eradicate their planned official development assistance to countries of low and lower middle income. In addition, we have discovered that this trend already began in 2024. The latest information we have analyzed show that already last year aid declined by 12%, which is one of the sharpest declines we have seen in a long time. All that takes us back to the 1990s, when aid levels were far, far lower than they ended up becoming after 2005.
Why is aid to education projected to drop by 25% by 2027?
Well, there are two sets of reasons, those that are related to aid cuts in general, regardless of sector. And of course, that, as I mentioned, has been driven by the complete change in policy by the United States. And then the realization by some of the major donors, high-income countries, primarily in Europe, that they need to shift resources domestically to other expenses for stability and security reasons. In any case, there was already a bit of a backlash in recent years in the internal political debate in these countries. Aid was one of the favorite targets for cuts in many of these election campaigns that we have seen in recent years. But then there's also the issue of education, and unfortunately education is also falling out of favor within aid budgets, and I think that's another important concern that very little is being discussed about.
How will this $97 billion shortfall affect those low-income countries who are trying to meet their education goals?
Well, aid was never going to cover that big shortfall. Think of the $97 billion donors were giving to low and lower middle income countries budgets, maybe about, depends how we define it, but about 10 billion. Already we had suggested that there were ways to target the poorest countries more, to target primary and secondary education more. There were things that could have been done. Now, of course, some of the lowest income countries do face quite a considerable challenge because, on average, aid accounted for about 17% of low-income countries' budgets of education. So that is a quite considerable gap. Some countries stand to lose half of that. That includes countries like Chad or Somalia. So that's a really important consideration about readjusting domestic spending. And that's in the time when, as we know, many countries are exposed to severe public debt pressures.
So what steps can governments and donors take now to reverse this downward trend?
Well, there had been many signs on the horizon that aid needed to become far more effective. We know very well that it hasn't always served the interests of the poorest countries. So now with less funding available, that becomes even more urgent. Our research suggests that there should be more funding channeled through multilateral funders rather than bilateral funders, so not from individual governments, but through the major international organizations that can allocate aid more equitably. And it's also necessary to ensure that most of this funding actually goes through government's budgets. Much was going through projects that were actually implemented by others. That doesn't help countries plan their education systems. So there are steps that can be taken at this moment, despite the difficulties, to make sure that this support actually has its full value.
Do the figures show any positive trends, and how can these be leveraged for more developments?
There has been, really the news are not very good. And as I mentioned in the beginning, they're probably going to get even worse when a few other countries and organizations announce their plans in the coming 2-3 years. I think the one good thing is aligned to the recommendation I made before, that in fact, more aid has been gradually going to pooled funds, those that get inputs from different countries and then reallocate them on a more equitable way and more efficient way. The funding that goes through governments' budgets, that governments can plan for them and therefore invest sustainably in education, is a key step for making that process effective.
Apart from this monitoring report, do we actually have adequate tools generally for the tracking of funding to better understand what needs to be done?
Yes, there are, of course, important data sources where all the donors contribute information. Where this is not particularly effective is when it comes to funding of education in crises and emergencies. We have done some additional work that shows that the different tools that we have, the different information for capturing financing in these contexts is not very well coordinated. So it is often not very clear in countries like Chad I mentioned before, or the Democratic Republic of the Congo that struggle with conflict, how such aid is allocated. Not all money that goes to these countries is humanitarian, dealing with the latest crisis and emergency. There's a lot of funding also that supports these countries from development, long-term support. But how these two different sources get together is complicated, and there's not enough information to help countries use these resources more efficiently.
All right, we'll leave it there for today. Manos, thanks again for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Great. Manos Antoninis is Director of the Global Education Monitoring Report, talking to us on the line.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Dozens of pro-Palestinian activists established a protest camp outside the German parliament, the Bundestag, in Berlin on Sunday, opposing the government's backing of a United Nations Security Council resolution in support of Israel and its continued arms exports to Jerusalem. The demonstrators accused the German government and parliament of being complicit in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and are demanding an end to weapons deliveries to Israel, as well as a stop to what they call the criminalization of the Palestinian solidarity movement. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe is in Berlin and found this report.
The Berlin camp, known to many as Occupy Against Occupation, began on April 8, coinciding with the start of International Court of Justice hearings in Nicaragua's case against Germany for providing military aid to Israel, with erected tents, hanging banners and placards that reads, "Stop arms delivery," criticism of apartheid, genocide is not anti-Semitism, and no to silence resolution. The protesters showed resistance and resilience while being watched by Germany police. The idea is to draw attention to Germany's complicity and active enabling of the Israel genocide in Gaza. Channel Africa spoke to the activists, beginning with the movement organizer Moad from Lebanon. For security reasons, their surnames are withheld.
First, this is the third camp we do here. We did one in April last year. Was going with the time, that Germany was in the ICJ again, for Nicaraguan case. But this camp specifically, the third one, is because we felt for 2 years almost we're going into demonstrations and no politicians, even the polls are saying that even the German people are not supporting the genocide, and they're not supporting how Germany is acting and being complicit in the genocide, but nothing is happening. So we thought, as an initiative that went also with the March to Gaza and everything, to build this momentum and give people, because there is a public shift, and we wanted to be here in front of those genocidal parliament of Germany, and also to connect to people, to bring them in and talk about it, because when they fail to do the job that they should do, so it's time for people to rise.
He says many other formations are actively supporting the cause, but raised the concern over Germany's blind eye on international law and its false display of guilt emanating from the Holocaust massacre.
That's why there are a lot of initiatives like the March to Gaza, the Freedom Flotilla, the Samud Convoy from Tunisia, and a lot of other countries, especially like South Africa, they're trying to help with that. But yes, it shows you first that this didn't start at October 7. This is the Zionist project. It's a European colonial project that is in the heart of the Middle East, and they will prefer actually fall and be against and not upholding international law just to save it. Especially in Germany, they have a lot about this guilt with the Holocaust. I don't know how you commit a genocide and you think we will resolve your guilt by supporting another one.
Operating under constant police repression, Moad says their movement is growing despite the fact.
It has been very steady. We in Berlin were facing a lot of repression in Germany, banning groups, arresting people for simply saying from the river to the sea. But we are strong. This repression is only making us stronger. We're growing more. Just last week we had over 60,000 people in a protest here in Berlin, and we will keep going. There's no other way to do it.
In solidarity with protesters, Esther is a German citizen who said their tax money is contributing to the continued relentless killing in Gaza.
I think German citizens do have a lot of reasons to be protesting their government right now, because their government is the second biggest deliverer of weapons to Israel. So whether they want to be or not, Germans tax dollars are actively killing people in Gaza, because that is what the German government is using to finance the weapons and the weapon parts they're supporting the IDF with.
That's a pro-Palestinian activist there in a protest camp outside German parliament, with a report brought to you by Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe. And that's the end of our programming in terms of news making headlines in and around our continent. But coming up on Channel Africa after Rise and Shine is On the Move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tao. Palesa joining us now to tell us what to expect today. How are you this Tuesday?
Good morning. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Happy new month.
Happy New Month, yes.
All right, today in the first hour of the show, we're going to be speaking about starting a new life abroad. And that can come with a host of challenges, but also a lot of excitement, I can imagine. But we're taking a look at a list of things that you need to consider before making that move. Obviously, understanding legal rights to live and work in the country, assessing your quality of life, the healthcare system, understanding the cost of living, and all that and more. We'll be talking to immigration specialist Emma Beshford about, some of the practicalities around setting up in a new country. Then we go in the cubicle, that is our workplace feature. And today we're taking a look at some of the big changes that Gen Zs especially have brought into the workspace and some of, the priorities that they're focusing on. We'll be looking at the Deloitte 14th edition of its Gen Z and Millennial survey that provides key insights into the evolving priorities of Gen Zs and Millennials in the workplace. So that's going to be quite interesting.
I'm sure they prioritize their rest more than anything.
Yes, their rest, their mental health. And then it's our Money Matters feature, taking a look at personal finance. And this is an important one because Africans do funerals very differently, but very costly. From the minute, one passes on, the week leading up to the funeral itself, and, all the things that we want people to think about us and the deceased and the family, the casket, all these fancy things that we do at funerals. I think it's something that we need to rethink, and we'll be speaking to Botswana-based Managing Director of Young Professionals Business Consultant, Lebogang Maroba, about the financial impacts of high-cost funerals and what we need to change.
Basically, the financial impacts of African funerals.
100%.
Because they are always high cost.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily so, I also think. All right, well, that's coming up on Channel Africa. Do stay tuned for that. From me, Asanda Beda, I'm leaving you. Hopefully, Peter will be joining us tomorrow. He's not feeling well, shame, and he had to leave. So let's do this again tomorrow, 6 till 9 on Channel Africa. DSTV 802, OpenView 6 to 8, www.channelafrica.co.za. Goodbye for now. We leave you in the very capable hands of Onel Nsinsi with your news details.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Looking at your top stories, Tunisian President Kais Said's critic sentenced and Britain's military exports to Israel unlawful. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. A Tunisian court has sentenced a prominent lawyer, Sonia Damani, and critical voice of President Kais Saied to 2 years in prison. A case rights groups say marks a deepening crackdown on dissent in the North African country. Damani's lawyer withdrew from the trial after the judge refused to adjourn the session, claiming Damani was being tried twice for the same act. The court sentenced Damani for statements criticizing practices against migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. Damani was arrested last year after making comments during a television appearance that questioned the government's stance on undocumented African migrants in Tunisia. Two of Cameroon's government ministers appointed by President Paul Biya have already declared to run for presidency, saying the 92-year-old is sick and hardly seen in public and cannot rule. Dissenting voices of close collaborators of Biya continue to echo, asking him not to run Cameroon's October presidential polls and accusing him of making Cameroon poor during his 42-year rule. Moki Kinzeka reports that pressure on Biya not to run for president again is increasing in Cameroon.
The opposition and civil society also say Biya is very old, sick, and is hardly seen in public, an indication that